but the gun was never found.
Maybe he killed other ones we don't know about.
In the quiet countryside of Leicestershire in 1919, a young woman's life was tragically cut short.
This is the very river. That's hard to explain. There's so many different adjacent roads.
And a green bicycle became the key to one of Britain's most mysterious and hotly debated murder trials.
We're going to follow this location, a very quiet village.
From circumstantial evidence to a sensational courtroom drama, the green bicycle case remains a haunting puzzle over a century later.
It's always weird to me when someone just kills one person and then never does it again. I can understand why someone might get rid of the bike. I'm leaning more towards the accident theory.
In this episode of Seeking Answers, we uncover the facts, the theories, and the lingering questions that still divide historians and true crime enthusiasts alike.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Seeking Answers.
I'm Rob, this is Jimmy. Today we are in Leicester and we are looking at the very bizarre green bicycle case.
Annie Bella Wright, though she was known by her middle name, was born on July the 14th, 1897 in Somerby inside Leicestershire, the eldest of 7. Her family lived in a thatched cottage in the village of Staunton, just 4 miles away from Leicester. She left education at the age of just 12, where she gained work as a domestic servant before moving on as a rubber hand at Bates & Co. St Mary's Mills, which was a rubber factory within the city. There was nothing particularly interesting or extraordinary about the young girl. By the time of this event, she was 21 years old, described as being good looking with a good character, and she was engaged to Royal Navy stoker Archie Ward. However, this quiet, discreet young woman was now about to be cemented in Leicester's bizarre history forever. On July the 5th, 1919. Bella worked her late shift at the rubber factory before heading out on her bicycle. She had been known to ride to and from work on her bike in the past, and on this particular occasion she was heading towards the village of Golby to see her uncle George Measures.
So at the minute we're located in Golby. This is where Bella's uncle lived. We're not exactly sure where, but it is a very quiet village. This would have been around the exact road that Bella and Ronald would have taken out of the village.
During her journey, she came across a young man who was heading in the same direction and offered to accompany her, to which she accepted. Bella arrived at her uncle's house safely, still in the man's company, though he patiently waited outside the cottage. George would later tell investigators that he was cautious of this man's appearance and mannerisms, but that his niece had informed him, quote, "Oh, him, I don't really know him at all. He's been riding alongside me for a few miles, but he isn't bothering me at all. He's just chatting about the weather," end quote. She claimed that he was acting like, quote, "a perfect stranger," end quote. But as she left the cottage again, she added, quote, "I hope he doesn't get too boring. I shall try and give him the slip," end quote. As she left the premises, George overheard the man saying, quote, "Bella, you have been a long time. I thought you had gone the other way," end quote. George would never see his niece again.
It is eerily quiet in the village, so you can tell it's definitely a location that not a lot probably happened back then, let alone today. But we're gonna follow this location right up until we get to the point of where the body was unfortunately found, and just go from there.
The pair left the cottage at around 8:50 p.m, but just 30 minutes passed before the dead body of Bella Wright was discovered by farmer Joseph Cowell on Gartree Road. She was found beside her bike. Her face had been extensively bloodied and she had deep gouge marks on her cheeks and jaw. Initially, it seemed like nothing more than a horrific bicycle accident. Cowell simply believed that she had been knocked off the road by a motorist and was fatally injured or bled to death. He headed over to Great Glen to report this to Police Constable Alfred Hall, who called in Dr. Williams from Bilston, who agreed with Joseph Cowell's accident theory at first. The body was moved to a nearby unoccupied house before Hall returned to the scene of the crime the following morning and made a grisly discovery. He found smears of blood on the top bar of a nearby gate to a field, though there were no human footprints on either side, but a dead crow was nearby as well. He also discovered a .455 caliber bullet just 17 feet away from where the body was found, deeply embedded into the ground by the imprint of a horse's hoof. The corpse was then cleaned and examined to discover a single entry wound beneath her left eye. At this point, a full post-mortem was ordered and it was discovered that Bella had been shot from around 6 to 7 feet away, and that the bullet had exited the rear of her skull. It didn't take long for the young victim to be identified as Bella Wright, and a thorough investigation soon began.
So we are now stood at the exact spot where Bella Wright unfortunately lost her life over 100 years ago. You can see on the map that there's so many different adjacent roads all over the place. It is likely that she may have taken a detour to try to get home quicker, and if it is, you know, the theory that Ronald tried to ambush her, there's so many roads to choose from. And behind us, it's a huge field. So she may have even cut through. Obviously this railing is relatively new, this wouldn't have been here, but there was some kind of fencing. It might have even been this fence here that they found the blood on.
Many witnesses saw Bella's final bicycle ride with the mysterious man, describing him as being between 35 and 40 years of age, with a broad full face, between 5'7" and 5'9", wearing a grey suit, grey cap, collar and tie, and wearing black boots. The police issued appeals to try to find this man, but nobody came forward. The gentleman was riding an extremely distinct green bicycle which contained a notable uncommon coaster brake, making it easily stand out. This led investigators to check all premises in which bicycles were bought, sold or repaired, to try to find any records of this green bike, but nothing turned up until 5 days after her death. Bicycle repairman Harry Cox informed the authorities that he had repaired a bicycle matching the description the day before the murder, and that the man had even remarked that he planned on going for a ride in the country the following day. It was on February the 23rd, 1920, Enoch Whitehouse was guiding a horse-drawn barge along the River Soar, when the tow rope of the barge snapped on something. It was the frame of a green bicycle. The bike was brought to the surface and it had been entirely dismantled and dumped into the river.
So we're now here at the Upperton Road Bridge, and below us is the River Soar. So this is the very river that the green bicycle was retrieved from. Looking at it, to be fair, it doesn't even look that deep, but you can never really tell with a canal. It looks like you can see the bottom, but it can be deceiving.
Upon further examination, the serial number on the bicycle had been filed off, but a faint one was still barely visible on the inside of the front fork. Authorities were able to use this to investigate all businesses who may have bought, sold or repaired bicycles to discover that this very one had been purchased by a Ronald Vivian Light 9 years prior. On March the 4th, 1920, Ronald Light was located at Dean Close School in Cheltenham, where he had been teaching mathematics for the past 2 months. And he was identified by many of the witnesses, including Bella's own uncle, as being the man who had accompanied her on her ride that day. He was then arrested and brought to Leicestershire to be charged with murder, and this is when the full history of Ronald Light's life came to the public eye. Ronald Light was born on October the 19th, 1885. He was the son of a wealthy civil engineer who managed a Colville colliery and also supposedly invented plumbing devices. In 1902, Light was reportedly expelled from Oakham School at the age of 17 for allegedly lifting a little girl's clothes over her head. He was also accused of trying to seduce a 15-year-old girl, and he also supposedly confessed to engaging in improper conduct with an 8-year-old girl as well, though this remains officially unconfirmed. Light graduated from the University of Birmingham as a civil engineer before gaining employment as a draftsman at the Derby Works of the Midland Railway in November of 1906. However, he was eventually let go as he was accused of setting a fire in a cupboard as well as drawing some indecent graffiti in a lavatory. He gained brief work on a farm but was again let go for allegedly setting fire to some haystacks. It was May 1910 when Light purchased the famous bicycle from the Birmingham Small Arms Company. He soon became a member of the Buxton-based Territorial Company of the Royal Engineers before World War I began. He underwent training at Chatham, Newark and Rupon before he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in February of 1915, being deployed over to the Western Front. However, on July the 1st the following year, he relinquished his commission in the Royal Engineers, though he did return to ranks as a gunner in the Honourable Artillery Company. It was on September the 21st, 1916 when Light's father tragically passed away in a supposed accident, though some believe that it was an intentional suicide due to his concern for his own son's safety in the war. By 1917, Light was court-martialed for forging move orders. After 3 years of active service, it was concluded that he was suffering from severe shell shock and partial deafness, so he was returned back to England to undergo psychiatric treatment. Light spent his recovery at several hospitals across the country before returning to live with his mother on Highfield Street in Leicester. He claimed to have been, quote, sent home a broken man, end quote. Light and Bella did not know each other, though this in of itself has caused speculation. Bella is confirmed to have been seeing another man at the time behind her fiancé's back, and had confided in her mother that a certain officer had fallen in love with her as well. Some believe that this may have been Ronald Light, though he always denied it, and this completely contradicts her own uncle's claims of their encounter that day, as she confessed to not knowing the man, though other reports state that she did seem familiar with him. This leads to only 3 theories, the first of which is that Bella Wright was murdered by Ronald Light. No other person could be verified to have been in the area of Gartree Road on that night, except for these 2 individuals.
We also realised, like, it's about a 5-minute drive from here to Galby, where we just were at the start of the video. And on a bike, we'll call it about 10 minutes. There's not a lot of time for them to have got here. Ronald and Bella to have parted ways, and then for a completely different third person to come in and murder her. It just doesn't make sense to me, unless he was lying in wait, but then Ronald would have heard something, and he never said that he did.
Initially, Light denied being in or near Galby at the time, or having ever even met Wright. He also denied ever owning a green bicycle, but once confronted with witness accounts, he conceded that he had lied. He initially claimed to have sold the bike years earlier to an individual whose name he couldn't remember, though he would later retract this claim entirely. His mother's maid, Mary Elizabeth Webb, admitted that Light didn't return home that night until around 10 PM, claiming that his bike had broken down and that he had to push it home. He had also either sold or destroyed all of the clothing he had worn that day as well. Light admitted that in October 1919 he removed the bicycle from his attic and filed off the serial numbers from the frame before taking it to the Upper Town Road Bridge in Leicester. He confessed to detaching and dismantling the entire thing and dumping it into the river, completely unaware that he was being watched by labourer Samuel Holland, who saw the entire thing as he was working a night shift at a nearby mill at the time.
This is right in the middle of the city centre of Leicester, but I'm going to assume that this was all greenery. Further up there is a bunch of greenery, so I'm going to assume that back in the day this was just all farm life. Yeah, this wouldn't have all been here. It wouldn't have been as obvious as doing it in the middle of the town centre.
On March the 19th, 1920, even more evidence was found inside the canal, which included an army pistol holster, which was definitively identified as belonging to Light, and it also contained a dozen live bullets which matched the one found at the scene of the crime as well.
But the gun was never found. The bullet did match his. That's hard to explain if it wasn't him. I mean, the gun, the fatal weapon, could still be right at the bottom there. Ironically, the police are across the road from us right now looking at us.
Furthermore, 2 other girls, 14-year-old Muriel Nunney and 12-year-old Valeria Caven, claimed that around 3 hours before he had met Bella, Light also began to pester them both as they were riding their bicycles nearby to where the body would later be found. It's been theorised that at some point Bella may have fled from him around a mile west of Galby. She may have panicked and headed south on an inferior road, but it could have also been used as a route to get home. He could have then found another way around to ambush her, waiting by the gate with his pistol before fleeing the scene. With such circumstantial evidence, you may be wondering what other theories there could possibly be, but there is a chance that Ronald Light might be genuinely innocent. Light's story is that on that day he rode his bike towards the crossroads where Galby Lane crosses Halton Lane, where he saw Bella bent over a bicycle and she asked him if he had a spanner to tighten a loose freewheel. He didn't have one on him, but he still tried to help her as much as he could. He claimed that after they left her uncle's cottage, they approached a junction beyond Kings Norton where Bella said that they would have to bid goodbye as she was heading left, while Light headed directly back to Leicester via Stelton and Evington. He claimed to have not even known about her death until days later when he read about it in the Leicester Mercury. However, he confessed that the word of the media and public started to make him panic. The public and media had already decided that the man who rode along with her on that night was the killer, even before questioning him. He didn't come forward to identify himself in fear of worrying his mother, who was sick at the time. He confessed to trying to destroy and discard of the bicycle out of pure panic due to the media frenzy, which is also why he initially lied about having been in the area or meeting her.
I think in a state of panic, I can understand why someone might get rid of the bike if everyone's already assumed that you're the murderer. It makes sense to me that you might panic and get rid of it.
The trial began at Leicester Castle on June the 8th, 1920, with Light pleading not guilty. He was described as always conveying himself with a well-spoken demeanour. He admitted to lying out of panic, but maintained that they parted ways not long before her body was found.
Just because he's well spoken and he's able to explain himself doesn't mean he's innocent.
That's true. Psychopaths have been... Ted Bundy was well spoken.
He confessed that the bullets, holster and bike were his, and that as an officer in the army he did own a Webley Scott service revolver, but that when he was stationed overseas all of his belongings were kept in a casualty cleaning station in France the previous year, which is where it remains. The pistol was never located. After 5 hours of cross-examination, investigators found that Light didn't contradict any of his claims once, and that none of his stories could actually be disproven. His defense also put forward the fact that Light had never met Bella before that night, and therefore had no motive to murder her. The girl hadn't been robbed, attacked, or assaulted. It seemed completely random. Marshall Hall, representing Light, also pointed out that the bullet found at the crime scene had received sustained damage, which could have been caused by a ricochet. He theorized that this was done from a rifle from a distance and not Light's pistol, especially considering if she was in fact shot from Light's gun at such close range, she would have suffered far greater damage to the face and would have most likely been completely unrecognizable. All that was left was a small entry beneath her left eye and a larger exit wound on the right side of her face, but no other suspect has ever been identified as her true murderer.
Now I'm kind of 50-50 but leaning towards that he's guilty, just because of the fact that there's no other suspects. Such a small area, I don't see how anyone else could be involved.
Our third and final theory is that Light did in fact kill her, but that it was nothing more than a horrific accident. The theory is that he may have been showing Bella his revolver and it could have accidentally discharged. This was corroborated by Leicester Superintendent of Police Levi Bowley, who claimed that Light actually confessed to him that this is what happened, but this remains hearsay and completely unconfirmed.
I'm leaning more towards the accident theory. I'm guessing the gun was probably at the bottom of the lake and they just never found it. It's always weird to me when someone just kills one person and then never does it again. But wouldn't you admit that in court? Because he admitted everything else.
Yeah. Unless he just thought, I'll get done for manslaughter, I guess. I don't know. Because is it still manslaughter if it's an accident?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he still get done.
But then again, he was accused of misconduct with children before all of this. But then the accident theory, there's still the issue of her face would have been more disfigured if it was such close range.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe he killed other ones we don't know about.
I don't know why you would show your gun to a woman to try to impress her.
After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury concluded that Ronald Light was not guilty and he was set free. A decision that actually caused cheers by many spectators in court. After the trial, Light returned to live with his mother in Leicester and lived the rest of his life as a recluse, using the different name of Leonard Estelle. However, in December of 1920, he was fined for registering under this false name at a hotel while staying with a female companion. By 1928, he was living in Lansdowne-on-Sea on the Isle of Sheppey in Kent, and by 1934, he was married to widow Lillian Lester. Ronald Light passed away on May 15th, 1975 at the age of 89. He was cremated at Charing Crematorium near Ashford, and his ashes were scattered in their garden of remembrance. He had no biological children to succeed him, though his stepdaughter claimed to have had no knowledge of his trial or acquittal until after his death, as he just never spoke about it. To this day, the story still lingers around the city of Leicester. The council arranges a guided bike ride every year to reenact the case, visiting significant locations in the murder before heading to Leicester Castle, where it all culminated with the verdict. Light's green bicycle spent decades being hung up on the wall of an Evington cycle shop, but its current whereabouts today remains unknown. However, in 1987, at a Christie's auction, an anonymous bidder purchased his bullets and holster for $6,000. But whether or not these were the ones that murdered Bella Wright, and whether or not Ronald Light was responsible or that his plea of innocence right up until his death is the truth, well, I guess all we can do is continue seeking answers.